everyone, and thanks for coming to our open house for our correctional facility. Is that,
Can everybody hear?
hello?
Can you give her more volume on yellow?
Hello? Oh.
Okay, I'll welcome you again. Thanks, everybody, for coming to our meeting, our special meeting. It's a special day today. It's 2/22/22. It's a good day to have that. We need to thank Mike for getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning and doing the work for us, and John for making the salads, but I think he had some help. Anyway, okay. Anyway, we'll proceed. We'll have a prayer by Reed Erickson, and then we'll have a pledge by Blaine Nate. So we'll go that far.
Our Father in heaven, we humbly bow our heads as we begin this public meeting this evening and give thanks for the opportunity that we have to be together in this setting to discuss important issues for our community, planning issues and identifying future needs, and being able to work together as a community to determine the best resolution to the concerns that have been raised and that will be raised this evening. We're grateful for the opportunity that we have in this environment, in this setting, to be able to discuss these matters civilly with each other, to look to the future, to make plans, and to be able to prepare for things to come, recognizing the importance of our community and the growth that we are experiencing, and recognize the values of this community that make it so desirable for people to come here, and that we can plan for this future, and that we can do so responsibly, that we can address the concerns of our neighbors and friends and community members. We give thanks again for this opportunity, for the leaders who have prepared for this evening and have made this possible, and give thanks for these things, and ask for thy spirit that we might present well, that the questions that people have and the concerns that they would like to discuss, they will be able to express themselves well and to be able to conduct themselves in a pleasing manner. And we say these things humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
I probably ought to also thank John Whitaker for setting this all up and then of course Mike Blake, Paul Cousins, myself, Marilyn Wood, Shalon Schaefer is our lieutenant at the jail. Reed Erickson is our planner. Ken Carpenter, our sheriff. Dan Jessen is our auditor, and Rob Cottle is
Babcock.
and he design and he engineers jails. So we'll go ahead and get started. This is a public hearing to review comments regarding the proposed construction of a correction facility. When you come up, if you'll state your name clearly so that we get that, and we'd ask to maybe stay within 3 minutes or so. If you'll be kind and no attacks, and anyway, we'll go ahead and get started.
Commissioner, do you, how do you want this to go? Do you want us to respond to any questions that are asked? How do you want to do that?
If they have a question, yeah. you know our panel here and what they do, and if you have a specific question that you want to ask one of our panel here, then you're welcome to do that. And we'll take a little time that way if you'd like. But we'll go ahead and get started. Anybody, first taker? Come on up.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rhonda Parkinson. I've lived here
A
now.
little closer.
Oh, sorry, could you speak in the mic?
My name is Rhonda Parkinson. I've lived here now in Cedar City. I'm starting year number 5. I'd like so many other people, don't hate me, I'm from California. Sorry, but I didn't bring my California views here. I'm very, it was the best decision my husband and I ever made. I worked for Disney for 38 years and decided to retire and come to your beautiful city, and I adore it. And I think that that's why I'm probably a little emotional about this and thinking that we would be building a prison right in the middle of our community. There's 2 sites, in particular the Auto Mall and the Enoch site, that I think are completely built up right now and have housing and very much future development that land could be used for far better purposes than a correctional facility of this size. I listened to the presentation on the internet, and I think that there's an excellent case to be made, and you guys should applaud yourselves. You did a great job putting towards the need for a new prison. The one that we have is extremely substandard. I think everybody agrees with that. It's just the location that people are having a problem with. The location, everybody should really seriously think about this. It's going to affect Cedar City forever, where this location is. And all the locations, Cedar City has become the hub for that for the entire, all of Iron County. So it really affects Cedar City. This new facility, you can see it here, is not similar at all to the current jail that's there. People have made the comment, well, we currently have a jail that's within our city, our 3 exits to our city. This is nothing in comparison. In its own words, it's considered a correctional facility. It's not a county jail. There's pods. There's 1 pod that's going to be started, followed by another pod. And the size and numbers, to me, resemble more of a prison than a county jail. I can only go on your past meetings and what you guys talked about, but you're planning to backfill with state prisoners. In your own words, you said that you couldn't open just partially a pod, that you had to open the whole facility. In order to pay for that, in order to fund it, it would be backfilled with state prisoners. And again, in your own words, that these prisoners are violent, they have mental and need other correctional facilities. So that's what's going to be going into this prison. The only other thing I could say is that current visitation is via the internet right now. But again, with your presentation, there was a daily release with everybody with these prisoners. So you're going to have people coming and picking these guys up on a daily basis. I have a son who is a county sheriff in another state, and he worked at their county facility before going on patrol. That was part of his duty. And he told me when we were talking about building this facility here, that the people who come to visit or the people that come to pick up the prisoners are often worse than the prisoners themselves. They have outstanding warrants, they have drugs, there were multiple arrests that happened in the parking lot. And to bring this clientele right into the middle of our city at the Auto Mall site or in the residential area near the dog park in Enoch is just, to me, the wrong thing to be able to do. Sorry about that. There's been some arguments that this all needs to be near the medical and for court dates. Again, planning a facility of this size, the transportation should be embedded in what that actual cost is. So when they go to present this and the actual cost for the bond, all of that should be taken into consideration. There shouldn't be patrol officers taken off the street. There should have transportation. That's transportation officers. That's what other states, I believe in Utah, other facilities have those there. There's been some comments on the internet. I think her name was Cassie, was one of the detectives or lieutenants that was in the correctional facility. She made mention,
That's 3 minutes.
okay, real quick, recognizing the growth then for this, and medical and everything should be embedded into the facility. We have medical that's embedded into like our senior homes. There's nurses and everything on site. All of that should be part of the planning for this facility of this size. Thank you very much.
Good evening, I'm Mary Morrow, and I will make a response to that. I think a great location is where the auto mall is. The reason being is, I was married for a number of years to a gentleman that was a lieutenant in the California state prison system. Quite frankly, it brings in better people in an area. And I can guarantee you that inmates know where every sheriff lives, where a police officer lives, parole officers live, and if they do escape, they will leave this area. More importantly, when you talk about the Medical Facility Society prison, it is not what a hospital offers. And regardless of how you feel, there are people that will need medical attention in a short distance away. When you think about transportation costs, when you think about infrastructure costs, we have all that here. I'm not wild about prisons anyway. I don't know why people just can't act nice. But really, but if you can't act nice, you need to be there, but it needs to be cost effective. And that's what I'm looking at as a taxpayer. I've never been arrested. I've never seen inside a police car because I'm teaching preschool. Now, I don't know how these things actually work. I just know as a taxpayer, I want to keep the costs as low as possible for as long as possible. As far as people picking up inmates, they're not going to stay there. If they're making arrests in the parking lot, that's good. They show warrants are being used. I have no qualms about a prison being built. We live right over Fiddler's Canyon. I have no qualms about it whatsoever. It'll bring more people in for employment, and it'll be as safe as any place else.
Any response from the county commissioners at this point?
You have a question?
No, I'd like to hear your response to the 2 comments.
Can I say one thing? I don't plan on saying much tonight. And it's one of the questions that's answered here. This is just a technical answer. This isn't spin one way or the other. A correctional facility is a generic term, right? Correctional facility is where inmates go to, we call them Department of Corrections, right? The state has a state prison. This is not a prison. States run prisons. Prisons are where they take people that are longer than a year, that are violent, things like that. Our law enforcement can talk about that. This is a county jail. It is also a correctional facility. A federal penitentiary is also a correctional facility. So a correctional facility is a generic term. This technical term to describe this is a county jail. We do call it a correctional facility. In fact, that's the name that's on the front of it right now. You see this one picture over here. It's the Iron County Correctional Facility. But it is technically a county jail. So prison is not a correct term. And I know that it doesn't really matter, but prison means something else, and it definitely has a certain connotation to it. So this isn't about marketing, but technically this is a county jail. I just want to say that because this is one of the biggest misunderstandings.
Thanks, Dan, that's good clarification.
Sheriff?
Yeah.
You gotta cover the news.
Let me talk about a couple of things. One of the questions or comments that was brought up was medical within the jail. We have medical in the jail. Currently, we have an RN. We have advanced EMTs. But the fact of the matter is we cannot treat everything that takes place within the jail like the hospital does. We have to have a close proximity to the hospital, to the emergency room, where we can take life-saving measures to treat people that that fall critically ill or injured. We can do basic life-saving things at the jail, but we're not a hospital. We never will be a hospital. You know, there's not a jail anywhere in the state that's a hospital. And so you need to keep that in mind. It's one thing. As far as releases go, you know, one of the comments that was also made was that we have people that are coming into the jail to pick up inmates as they're released. Those people are not charged with any criminal offense. They may be involved in criminal activity, but they are already out in your community. They're already out in your neighborhoods. They are free citizens of Iron County and can go anywhere in the county that they wish. And once an inmate is released from the jail, other than whether they're on probation or parole, they too are free citizens. They have paid their debt to society as ordered by a court and have been released from the facility and are free to go any place in the nation that they want to. You have to keep that in mind, is that, you know, once they're released from jail, they're no longer an inmate, and we cannot treat them as a criminal any longer. As far as state and federal inmates, we've talked about this a lot. Our federal inmates are short-term. They're here on pre-sentence where they've been convicted of a crime but have not received their sentence yet. We usually keep them somewhere between 60 and 90 days. Once they're sentenced, then they are shipped to a federal penitentiary where they're going to spend their long-term duration of their sentence. As far as state inmates, on the paper that Dan put together, he referred to them as permanent inmates, but they really aren't permanent. We may have them for a longer period of time, but in our contract with the Utah Department of Corrections, if they misbehave, we can send them back anytime that we want to. If they're not meeting the expectations that we have for them, we can send them back anytime that we want to. Those inmates are never released into our community. They go back to the Utah Department of Corrections at the end of their terms and are released by the Utah Department of Corrections, not the Iron County Jail. And I think that that's also important for people to understand and recognize. Is nobody is being released into our county that don't already belong to our county. The only inmates that are released here in Iron County are those that have been arrested and convicted for crimes within Iron County.
What's the ratio of county prisoners versus state prisoners?
Currently, we have 10 state inmates and 45 federal inmates currently.
What's
If you could come to the mic if you're going to speak, we got to get it on the recording. Sorry.
with the new facility?
Plus we're broadcasting on the internet, so if you could come to the mic.
Sorry, we can hear you, but
With the new facility, then what's the ratio of state prisoners, federal prisoners, with what it holds? Because again, according to what you guys told us at the last meeting, is that you're backfilling with all of these prisoners in order to make the pod efficient.
Yeah, but so the new, a single pod will house 384 people.
And currently, it's
384 beds.
currently, we have 170, correct?
Currently, our bed space is 254, 256.
But you only,
So,
but
but
you
we
only
can-
use 170, right?
Right now, we use about 180 is basically what we have. And the reason is because our jail is so old that with the design of it, that it does not facilitate us being able to use all the bed space. Because as things have evolved from the time that it was originally built, we have to classify inmates according to the different classifications in order to be able to keep certain criminal classifications separate from others. It ends up eating up some of our bed space, so we cannot utilize all of our bed space. With the new designs of jails and whatnot, The new facility would give us about is it 81%?
85%.
About an 85% increase over what we're able to house right now.
Oh, no, I'm at 85% capacity. It's about 82% increase.
So, but when you look at our inmates, so let me give you an example. If you look at Kane County's facility, they house 5 county inmates. They backfill everything else with state inmates. Because it makes a lot of money for them. It pays for the facility and for a lot of the things without having to raise taxes. Beaver County runs their entire sheriff's operation off of housing state inmates. They have more state inmates than any other jail in the entire state. They house about 384, I think is their last count, of state inmates. By comparison, we house 10.
So I guess,
So, and part of the reason is because our jail is full of county inmates. And that's our primary purpose, is housing county inmates. That if we have free space, then we're going to backfill that space with federal and state inmates to reduce the operating costs of the facility so that we don't have to pass that cost on to use the taxpayer.
right, and so that's when I was saying earlier, and I probably didn't do a very good job of it, because I was nervous, but it's basically almost a business, because again, in your other presentation, the gentleman talked about even building pod number 2 potentially at the beginning of this, and backfilling it. And other counties have done that in order to pay for it. So it comes down to this a little bit for those of us who are against the auto mall site. It's, that's a future site for, I talked with Garth Green, our mayor, he's trying to get a Harmon's or something like that. When it's an auto mall site, that is the premium site. That's like one of our 3 exits off of our city.
If that's so
And so-
premium, why hasn't anybody
Because
built
our
there in the last 20
development, our
years?
development is taking us towards there. In the last 5 years, I think we've increased the population by like 5,000.
But you need to understand though, is that
So it's
That
either a
space has
business
been-
with the
that space has
food,
been
or it's,
available
or it's a
okay.
potential business with
there's,
things that can help our community.
have
such as
you looked at where our current jail is?
Yeah.
Have you looked at the business around it?
Yes.
There was nothing there back in
Oh,
1987.
I'm sure, 36 years ago, it
In
wasn't.
1987, when that was built, nobody was there. Everybody is built up around that facility, and they will do so again.
But that's,
If you go look at the brand new prison that the state is building right now, it's not even open yet, and yet business is springing up around it. Because they brought the utilities out there, they've turned over dirt, and they've showed that it's viable. They've built infrastructure and other things. It's the same thing. When we come in and build a jail, if that's where we choose to do it, it's going to help stimulate that property for future growth. It's not going to be a detraction.
yeah,
And you may argue with that,
yeah, I
but
think.
the fact of the matter is if you look at every jail around the state has business popping up around it.
Well, I just took a drive this weekend out to another state, to Ely, Nevada, and they have a state prison there, and there's nothing there. There's signs all around it that say, do not pick up prisoners. So that's not always,
That's a state prison.
that's not always the case. Yeah, it's still, I'm just saying, we're building a correctional complex in a place where we could have a really great business opportunity. And I feel very strongly about that, and that's why I'm here tonight.
And what we feel very strongly about it as well, and we believe that it's only going to help stimulate Cedar City's economy. It's not going to hinder it.
Two pods were mentioned. I don't support really 2 pods. I support really 1 for now. And like Dan, our auditor, Dan, what do you say? With your projections, maybe 20, 30 years out, we might need a second pod.
It's hard because you're projecting population. Everywhere you look, you'll see slightly different population projections. You look at the population in the past and it does this, right? And then you forecast this nice smooth line. We're growing like crazy right now. It's been a real hard discussion. Our sheriff and our jail staff are nervous about building only 1 pod. Our commission are nervous about building too big of a facility that's too expensive. And they're both valid concerns. So we're trying to find the right middle ground that we can thread that needle, that it's affordable and it has some future plans. But that's, I don't know if I answered your question, but that's, in my projections, I show that from the county's own needs, about 30 years out, we're gonna have completely filled the pod with only county inmates. But that may be wrong. We may be off by 10, 15 years. If we keep growing like we're growing right now, we will be.
Could one of you address, I know I asked this question, why we need some stable, long-term prisoners from like the state or federal to perform some of the functions in the jail? Could you explain why some of the county, I don't know who wants to address that, but I thought it was good.
Shalon, maybe.
Shalon.
For-
Yeah, for workers like laundry and kitchen and some of those duties.
All right, so our state inmates that we have right now, they are not, again, they're not permanent inmates with us. They come to us after, so they've been sentenced to more than a year, and they go to prison, and then they have to earn their classification down to where the prison's willing to release them into our county jails. These inmates are not ones that you see out mowing the lawn. They're not the ones that are out on the street. We don't allow them outside of our exterior walls. So what they come down to us for is they come and they work in our kitchen, they work in the laundry, they work as an inside maintenance worker, all for that 40 cents an hour, right? But they come down because that's easier for them it passes the time for them. But if they do not work, if they come down to us and they say, no, we're not working, then we call the state and say, hey, this isn't working for us. And they come and get that inmate and they replace them with somebody else that has earned that right to come, or earned the classification to come down into a county jail. So they have a lot to lose, right? So if we tell them that they have to go back, they have to go back and start their classification system in the prison. And so they have a lot to lose, and they come down and they work hard for us. So that is something that's very,
Culinary. Culinary.
that they work in the culinary.
Yeah.
Yeah, they work
asked to come.
Oh yeah, most of the time when we pick up state inmates, it's because they've asked to come to Iron County. They love to come to Iron County, and we have a good program for them, and that just helps them when they pay their debt to society, that they have these skills that they can be released into these communities and have every single one of them. We put them through the food handler's permit. They can be released with their food handler's permit, and that gives them hope when they get out of prison. So that is a good thing for the state inmates.
I'm Blaine Nay, Cedar City. When the discussion of the new jail started coming up, I thought that the landfill would be the best spot because the county already owns the land, get them away from town. But after the last meeting and learning about all the issues, I'm satisfied that the Outlaw site is the best. I've lived here under 4 different sheriffs, and every one of them has kept our community safe around that jail. So I'm not worried about safety. I think we need to go with Outlaw.
Thank you.
How old are you?
Blaine is my friend. 4 sheriffs. Shotland was a sheriff for like 30 years.
Okay, my name's Guy Nelson. Been in Cedar about 5 years. My question to you is not knowing the process, because this is out of my lane. The process of deciding who makes the decision on the location of the jail. Who does make that decision? Is it one person or is it a committee? And then my second part of that question is it transparent? Do we know who influences these people in their decision-making process? Yeah.
So I can speak to that. So that becomes a legislative decision. Obviously, things like this, that means the commissioners, right? And you're right here. And yeah, it's them. And that's why we begged for public comment for the better part of a month. We're going to continue to. We'll have a public hearing on March 14th when they consider it. And so it's the commissioners. It's a legislative decision. And I appreciate that they've been willing to receive public comment and be as proactive about it as they have, frankly.
Okay. And the way that they receive the comment is through this meeting, or is it online?
Yeah. So to clarify, so we have an email if you haven't had a chance to make a comment.
I've seen all these.
Clerk.group@ironcounty.net, and those get bundled together by my chief deputy to the commissioners, public comments like this. And then there are papers in the back. If you don't feel like getting up tonight, you can write it on one of the papers and hand it to one of us.
And if we see that the ideas of the population are different from the ideas of the commissioners and the body, are we transparent enough to explain why it's different? That's all.
Absolutely. This is gonna be a really hard decision for all of us. I mean, we've taken all the input, of course, our staff and we've looked at a lot of jails. This whole year before, we've gone and visited a lot of different jails throughout the state. And it's gonna be a hard decision, but just remember, please, remember that what our decision is for the good of the whole county. Not for one person, not for the other person, it's for the whole county. And that makes it a really hard decision, but yet that's what our job is, and that was what we was elected to do. Well, you guys have anything else?
May I throw something in?
Sure.
No, it's one of the things, a lot of people have claimed that there hasn't been transparency on it. And I would say that's ignorance on the part of the community. This was a campaign issue that all 4 of the sheriff's candidates ran on 4 years ago. We talked about this ad nauseum during the campaign 4 years ago. Sheriff Gower talked about it long before that. The county commission, prior to this county commission, was looking at land over 4 or 5 years ago or longer. We have tried to make this as transparent as we possibly can. It's been on agendas throughout the county commission's meetings. We've dealt with the business planning department over at SU and had them do evaluations on different sites and whatnot and receive feedback from them. We've done everything we can to make this public. And people aren't, I've talked with civic groups and all kinds of different groups about this whole process for years. This has been going on for years, and we've tried to make this as public as we possibly can. The fact of the matter is we're finally moving forward, but we're still a long ways from being there. If we had a decision today and we're able to start the process today, we would still be 3.5 to 4 years out before we have a facility.
Okay, my question's not about, do we need a jail? We need a jail.
We need to check.
It was last week that you brought 4 locations up. The week before that, there was just 1 location.
But before that, there were 5 other locations that we've already dismissed.
And we dismissed more locations and we're down to 4 still, or are we down to 2?
We're down to, 3, 4?
Are we?
Well, we haven't made a decision.
When will that be made?
It's anticipated that'll happen during the March 14th meeting. So to be clear, there's the Enix site, the Auto Mall site. Enix site is roughly 200 north, and Valley Road, the Auto Mall site is right. And then the landfill site, which is out by the landfill. And then I believe still on the map is the Smead site.
So the meeting will be, or the location will be announced at the meeting. It'll be decided before that.
So this meeting tonight is for a public hearing. And the March 14th meeting will be an opportunity for the commissioners to discuss and decide during that meeting which site, if there's a consensus. So that's the process. It is to be done in an open and public way, and part of that includes another public hearing on March 14th, as well as the commissioners debating it in that meeting and perhaps coming to a decision on not only location but scope.
Will the public input at that meeting?
Yeah, there'll be an additional, so tonight's meeting is agendized as just a public hearing, so we're not allowed to make any decisions tonight because it's not agendized that way. We're hoping with the input that we have tonight, with all the previous stuff that we have, and then the additional input that we'll take on March 14th. That's our regularly scheduled commission meeting. That at that point, hopefully we have enough information to be able to make a decision at that meeting, but that decision will be made in open meeting. We haven't gotten together and there's nothing.
We can't do
Okay,
that.
so
But they will vote in that meeting.
can I assume when I see surveying engineers on a property, that this is them?
You know, I was,
Yeah, we've got to do preliminary assessment of these sites. In fact, so I can talk about that, or maybe Paul, you want to talk about, we did put an offer on the Smead site, and started looking at it, doing our due diligence. That's why surveyors were out there. Come to find out, it's going to take a little bit more. If we select that site, it's going to cost probably an extra $1 million or $2 million than we expected for site prep. That's part of the due diligence in looking at those sites. We've been doing due diligence like that at these other sites as well. And to be clear, there's multiple parcels at some of these sites. So even if we select a site and they vote on it, we still have to then acquire that ground, still go through due diligence. That site, even if they vote on it, could potentially fall through. So
We've had owners of the auto mall property where they were gonna move their car dealerships to actually approach us and want us to entertain purchasing property there. I don't support that because I do believe that should be reserved for retail or a grocery store or whatever. We're looking at property to the east of that and push it back where it's a little more hidden, back in it, or actually borders BLM land. The thing is that even if we decide on one of these sites, it still has other processes. Like for instance, this site out at the, what we're calling the auto mall site, there's still, even if we say we want that site, it still has to go back to the Cedar City Council. They have to do a, what is it, Rita? General plan amendment and a zone change. So there has to be two steps.
And
that- and conditional use. So there's 3 other steps that would have to be done, and that would fall back to Cedar City to make those, make those decisions. And so it's just because we choose that site doesn't mean it's a done deal. It goes to another body, legislative body, to make some of those decisions.
If I could just offer a couple of thoughts in the discussion we've had so far. In making a decision, the legislative body, purpose of public hearings really are most useful when they provide constructive information of why one site's better than another. You've heard what we all agree we need a jail. I think we've gotten to that point. And in trying to determine a site, it's best to try to identify, would help the commission in a decision to be able to articulate what are the advantages or the disadvantages to a particular site. Say, I don't like that site. Why not? What are the disadvantages to that site? What are the advantages to one site over another? I think that's really what I think would be helpful for them in terms of trying to make a decision on selecting the best site.
As just an observer,
Name, please.
Name,
please.
J. Ramsey Gibson. Thank you. Back in '88, I was teaching in Indiana, and I wrote a paper and went on an assignment to be a guest carpenter at the Shakespeare Festival. So in '88, I came out here, and then shortly after that, my wife and kids came out to join me just for the summer. And one night, we decided to go to a movie, and I guess the problem was we didn't like the one that was playing downtown, but we heard that there was a movie theater out on the edge of town. So we, well, we'll try that. So we got on Main Street and drove out of town, and it was more desert and a few trees, and there wasn't much going on, and then we found a movie theater. So we went to the movie theater, and now I realize that was just a year after the Sheriff's Department building was built. Well, what has deteriorated in the countryside between the theater and the sheriff's prison office, whatever you want to call it, there are things growing up all the way around it. And on the north side, businesses are growing even farther north. So I guess you guys aren't causing a problem that you should be causing.
So I belong to him. My name is Kathy Gibson. We live in Fiddler's Canyon, and I feel very, very safe living where there is a jail nearby. And I support the auto mall site. The fact that it would be maybe a little farther back than where the businesses might be. That works for me just fine. Now, I base my opinion, and like the gentleman said earlier, at first I thought, oh yeah, out by the landfill, that's the place to put it. And then attending the meeting, the last meeting, that was so informative. If you missed it, I'm sorry you missed it, because it was extremely informative. And it made me understand several things. One, how fiscally responsible all these people are being. Number two, how important it is for the jail to be centrally located to the whole county, because we have to consider the people in Parowan. We have to consider the people in Bryan Head. I also learned that the most dangerous time period for all of our correctional officers is that time period when inmates are being transported. And the shorter the distance of transport, the safer those people are going to be. And I think that's a huge consideration that hasn't been brought up in this meeting. A question was asked at the last meeting, was asked of our sheriff. Sheriff, if you could make the decision of where to put the jail, where would you put it? Where would he put it? At least the last meeting, he said he would put it at the Auto Mall site. I don't know if he's changed his mind. But, I think the people who are working there, the people who are on the front line, so to speak, need to have a very loud voice and consideration into the location of this. But I would live right near it and I would feel very safe.
I have a question for you. How close are you?
We live on Hawthorne Lane, so we're driving down that street all the time.
Light, sound? I just met you tonight. This is not a setup. I just wondered how loud it is, how bright it is.
You don't know it's a jail. I mean, you see no concertina wire, you don't see anybody patrolling outside, but we do see a police presence in that area. And that's wonderful.
good,
This
right?
may backfire. How often do they leave out of there with their sirens on?
I don't know.
But the ambulance is right there too, and they do, I know.
I don't have an answer to that question.
Just so you're off the hot seat.
You're not.
So just talking about the last meeting, if you go to ironcounty.net, we do have a link on the page that goes to jail information. The last meeting that we had February 8th is there in its entirety, can be watched. We will also, the PowerPoint from that last presentation will be there. I talked to them tonight, I forgot to send it to them, I'll give that to them tomorrow. So all the informational slides and everything from that last meeting will be available on ironcounty.net, but the video and such of the last meeting are up and streaming now. So if you want to go back, I would encourage people to go back and watch that
Very informative.
on the front page of ironcounty.net. That's Justin. He's the master of the ironcounty.net. If there's issues, go after him. There's not.
It's been interesting. My name is John Bowen and I live in Enid. And from the Auto Mall site, Enid goes downhill. It's impossible to build anything without having an effect on the environment. And what happened in Enid last year was we got a lot of water. One of the reasons we got a lot of water there is there's a lot of houses and houses don't absorb it. Roofs shed water. Our engineer over here could tell you maybe how much a 5-inch rain would create how many acre feet of water, and it all wants to run downhill. So I'm gonna ask you, please consider the draining so that we don't have to wade in it in any after a big rainstorm. A cloudburst like last year would be disastrous. And I know there's gonna be a lot more building there, but over to the west of Love's, there's a couple of natural water courses. The only water courses from the east side of road there, run down to the I-15, along I-15's pavement, and then under it and straight into Enid. Some of it get caught in the fields. But if you look at those new houses that are built down there, I don't think they would survive another flood like this. I think they're in trouble. I don't want that to happen to my neighbors again, or me. So keep a good watch on the drainage from there. Plan for it.
I could maybe address that a little bit. Most new construction requires what they call detention basins. They have retention and detention. Detention basin, you have to build and Rob could correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to build a large enough storage facility where you can store that water and it releases it slowly over time, so it's not a flash flood. So I'm sure this, and then you could probably address this better,
Sure,
Rob. Why don't you
sure.
talk about that?
No, you're absolutely right. Well, and I'm actually an architect, not an engineer, so you had me stumped on the acre feet question. It's like, boy. Anyway, no, Commissioner Cousins is absolutely right. All facilities like this have to be designed such that you retain all of your own runoff on your own site, and then it is released in a measured way. So there's detention basins that can be either underground concrete vaults that hold a certain amount of water, or you can use natural features such as we call them bioswales, or even just berming the exercise yard, for example, so in the event of a 100-year or greater flood event, it retains the water on site. Might flood the exercise yard for a day or two until it drains all out, but it doesn't pass the problem downhill to the next person. So we absolutely take that into account when we design.
Actually, I started looking up things like detention basins, and I could put a pretty good sized one in my driveway. But I don't know that I have the funds to do it, and I'd still want to be able to drive a loaded truck across it. I have to know about that. But it's really something. I'm a newcomer here myself, and I moved up here from the Phoenix area, and I saw some really nice ones being built down there. You know, they have a detention basin for the runoff from a cotton field down there, from the irrigation. So it's kind of interesting. But thank you for, I think everybody here profited from that too.
Also, I'll add to that. There's, like I said, there's multiple parcels around the Automall site, as Commissioner Cousins talked about. The parcels that are already developed, that are currently owned by some of the car dealers, which are less likely to happen. We wouldn't impact really anything that's already there. It's already designed with storm drain and all that stuff. If we were to go up against kind of the mountain up against the BLM land that Commissioner Cousins talked about, we would actually be improving what's there. Right there, there's no retention whatsoever. If we put a facility like this in, as Rob mentioned, we would have to design it to deal with the water that's coming down through that kind of that natural drainage, including improving the current retention that's there. So I'm just saying, if we did it there, it would improve what we have. We would be able to help some. And I know that Rob Dotson is here, and I know they're looking at some NRCS projects to work on some of that retention anyways.
You know, one thing I didn't know, I was down here getting my hair cut, and the barber said, I'm from Enid, and I said, well, I'm from Enid. He says, do you live in Upper Enid or Lower Enid? So I had to determine which was upper and lower. I live in Lower Enid.
Well, Dan mentioned Rob Dotson, the city manager, who's here tonight. You're very well represented in Enid by Mr. Dotson. He approached me with this same question several weeks ago. We made sure that that's been part of our conversation from here on out. Is what, we were there during the Enid flood, and in fact, I was the only police officer on duty covering the shift both Saturday and Sunday. When talk about that, I saw the flood, swam in the flood. But just so you know, Enid City's been very involved in these conversations, and Rob brought that to our attention a few weeks ago, that's something we need to really be mindful of, is the downstream, and I really appreciate that input. certainly in the talks and in the plans. I want to give a shout out to Rob, basically, for taking care of his city.
Yeah, my name's Ron Morrow, and we've lived in Cedar City area for about 13 years. And 2 years ago, we moved to a condominium about 2.5 blocks from the current county jail. I knew it was there. I've never had a problem with it in the 13 years I've lived here. But even 2.5 blocks away from it, I feel totally safe. I've never heard a police siren at my location. And now if we're talking about a federal penitentiary, I would definitely not agree with that. Any site in Cedar City. But it's safe. I feel safe. I probably feel safer there because I know the police presence is right there. So wherever you build it, it's okay with me. And auto center sounds like the cheapest and the best way to go.
Franklin Woodley. I want to speak up for the auto mall site. It is for our sheriff's department. We do have to think about all of our county. It's the most convenient to the freeway. It's going to be a deterrent to those people. We are in a drug corridor being on I-15. It's going to be a deterrent for those people not to do things in our county, having it there. But more so, it's the convenience for our sheriffs. Because as Brian had said at the last meeting, they may not have an officer on duty the longer that they have to be away. And it's going to be closest there. And really, there's going to be the natural buffer. Cedar City is in the process of building park nearby, not too far from the auto mall. There's going to be those buffers that some of the other sites don't have.
Well, he's coming up. Also, our sheriff's department, our employees, for them to have to go clear to Iron Springs or whatever is a long ways when they live, a lot of them live here in Cedar City or in Enid. A lot of them live in Enid around.
Just to make one other comment, part of the reason we're looking at a 40-acre parcel is because we want to encourage the state courts when they grow out of the 5th District Courthouse, where right now they're bursting into the seams. Right now they have 3 courtrooms in the 5th District Court, but they can only hold 1 jury trial at a time because they have to use 1 court as a juvenile court, and the 2nd court has to be used for jury sequester during a jury trial, and they have no more space. So as the county continues to grow and their caseload goes up, they're going to have to do something different. We want to be able to encourage them to build their new facility next door to our jail facility, which will dramatically save on transportation costs and risks to the community. And so that's part of the reason that we're looking at what we want to do. If we were to locate that out of town, like out of the landfill, there's no way the state will go out there. They've already told us that they won't. So we need to make sure that what we're doing is going to be for the long-term good for the county as a whole.
They probably wouldn't go out to Enoch. I mean, they want to be
Probably
as
not.
close to city center as possible to serve.
That's another plus for the auto mall. They already have state-owned land right near the auto mall site.
Sheriff, could you address prisoner transport in that regard? The advantage of having an adjacent facility if that were to work out?
Yeah, so I like using Davis County facility as a example. If you ever go to the Davis County Sheriff's Office and Justice Complex, it's built in a horseshoe, and in the center of the horseshoe is their parking lot. On one side are the courts, kind of across the center are their lawyers' offices, administrative offices. And then on the right side is the sheriff's office and the county jail. And they actually have a tunnel that runs from the jail to the court. So they have one deputy at one end of the tunnel and one deputy at the other end of the tunnel. And they walk the inmates through the tunnel to the court and back. There's absolutely no risk. It's completely contained, and it saves that county probably, thousands and thousands of dollars in wages, in fuel costs, in vehicle costs, and everything that's associated with transporting inmates. And that's part of the reason that it's important for us to be able to be very centrally located, because regardless of whether we have medical in our facility or not, we're still going to have to transport some inmates to medical facilities for treatment. We're going to have to transport inmates to court cases in their court hearings and whatnot. Anything that we can do to try to minimize those transportation efforts is going to be to the benefit of the taxpayers and to the benefit for the safety and security of my deputies. That's very important to me.
Sorry, I'm gonna chime in, I apologize. So currently, right now, we have 5 deputies that are in our transportation department, and we have 50 employees at the jails, so that's 10% of our staff solely works in transportation and transporting those inmates to and from court and to their medical appointments. So that is something that if we are connected to the court, that is something that would help a lot.
Okay.
After all that.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Commissioners. Randall Cagle. I worked for a large local government in Nevada for many years. Our city hall was right beside a residential subdivision. When we got ready to build a new jail, detention facility, we decided to build it right next to City Hall. In fact, my office was 50 feet away from where this facility was built. I had to go and acquire a whole block of homes so City Hall could be expanded into the residential area. So the detention facility was literally just a street away from the residential homes. I never felt unsafe. We never had incidents. In fact, I would rather have a detention facility next to my home than an apartment complex. Or condos, or a lot of these other things. I don't know what site is the most cost efficient site, but I hope our commissioners consider the taxpayer and go with the most efficient, cost-effective site. Like I said, our facility is right next to residential, so I don't think being next to residential should be a discounting factor. It shouldn't even be considered because it is not a negative impact. And I do agree with Commissioner Cousins. I'd like to see that auto mall reserved for future commercials, so if you could push it back, that'd probably be better.
Well, I have a comment on that. I grew up in Moab, and I grew up right next to a cemetery, just outside the city limits of Moab. And people used to always ask my dad over the years, doesn't it bother you living by a cemetery? He said, no, they're the quietest neighbors we have. and I think how much noise does a jail draw? And Sheriff Shalon, is there noise at a jail?
Well, these folks right here just they live next to it.
No, we no longer do the Stalag 13 model with the roving searchlights and the air raid sirens. That kind of fell out of favor, so no, they're very quiet.
What about lighting? Can you talk about lighting?
Sure. We talked about this at the last meeting, but lighting is very important for a secure facility like this. You don't want a building that's dark or that has dark corners around it where people can hide. So you do need to have a well-lit facility, but we do design to dark sky standards. And so what that means is that we have lighting on the buildings, but it's all downlight. So wall washer type lights against the buildings, and even the parking lot lights. We use what are called cutoff fixtures that have basically an aim shroud that make sure that the light does not go past the property line. So you're not having bright lights shining up to the sky, really messing up what's a beautiful dark sky here at night. I mentioned that last time that I live in Salt Lake City, and if you sit out in the backyard long enough, you can see the stars. But when you come down to southern Utah, you go out at night, it's spectacular. So we don't want any building we design to contribute in any negative way to adding any light pollution. So that's something we watch very carefully. We did that at Kane County, Sanpete County, and Uintah County for the exact same reasons.
I just want to put a plug in for Rob. If as you leave, there's a picture on the left here that's like it's like a collage. These are buildings that Rob has designed. They are correctional facilities throughout the state, county correctional facilities, and one is Ute Indian Tribe Correctional Facility. But those are all jails that he has designed in the state of Utah, and you can see inside and outside. He just took pictures from his own computer. So.
How's it going? My name is Oscar Falcahua. They know me as the big brown guy around here. So there was some worry about having a second pod. My brother Cousins here. In my industry, things have changed a lot. I work with youth, and we're in residential treatment care. A few months back, a young lady from Hollywood showed up here in Utah and caused a havoc in my industry. And basically said that it's nothing more than a bunch of people abusing kids. And I can share with you that in my industry, if you want to know something about it, you should probably go work in it so you can understand how it works. But if we don't do something to make sure that we take care of that part of it, because kids grow up to be adults, and adults are what we have to place in these pods, then we're going to continue to grow even bigger than that. So my whole thing is, please keep that thought. I don't like the thought of adding more, because the thought comes that means there's going to be more people that have to go to jail, right? But there was one time when I was a white guy and really skinny, right? And so what I did was I kept making my pants bigger, and now you see me, I'm a big brown guy, right? And so that part of it worries me. But at the same time, since my industry doesn't get to have a say, right? We can't restrain a kid properly. We touch a kid, all of a sudden we're in trouble. There are treatment centers that are being shut down all over Utah that are going through struggles because of this. And so as we're having this conversation, the one thing that I do know is this. At some point, if we don't do something to help our youth, our adult corrections is going to continue to grow. And so I don't know about where it needs to be placed. All I know is every facility I ever see is right on I-15, and it's right in town. So thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, there comes a taker.
I have to, because I think my husband would probably talk if he were here. I'm Stephanie Hill. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, committee. And I have to agree, whoever it was that said that the former presentation was exceptional. Reed did a wonderful job. I love that visual. Were there 7 competing aspects that you brought to 9? 9 competing aspects of the 4 different locations, correct? It seemed very clear that there were only 2 that were viable. And when my husband, Chris Sorensen, asked what the sheriff wanted, he has been in law enforcement. The sheriff didn't hesitate. He said the auto mall. One of the things, and I think the reason that I'm standing is that Chris would want it mentioned because I hear it far too often. He was formerly in law enforcement. He said that the biggest liability for the county is our correctional facility. We've elected this man.
That's true.
And I would say that special education, non-compliance with special education is also a huge liability, and that's sort of my expertise. But if our duly elected sheriff, our representative, has told us that he has a preference, that clearly, having been examined by the engineer and by the other professionals, if our sheriff can without question say that it's the auto mall, I think we probably ought to listen to him. I think that he has considered everything along with the other people who are weighing this. I'm sure that they're the ones that have to cut the checks. This is the second poorest county in the state of Utah. They're not throwing around money. We don't have money to throw around. We don't have it. We clearly need it. It certainly makes sense to offset part of the expenses by housing federal and state prisoners. Certainly we don't, and it wouldn't turn into a prison. Thank you for the definition. But it makes sense if it's within our capacity to do that. I would just remind us again, we elected this man. We trusted him at one point. I think we trust him now. I heard him talk last night. I may be the only person who's from Cedar City. My family settled the area. I listened to him last night as he talked with the stockmen. I'm part of that community. Part of the people who actually paved the roads and drove on them before there were roads. That's in my blood. And I have chosen a simple life because I come from simple people. He promised us last night that he would make sure that agriculture was represented by him and by his deputies, and I really appreciate that. We have all elected him. We have put our good faith into his competent professional hands, and I don't want a lawsuit, and I don't want inmates or the employees in danger because of transportation. And if somebody's got to get to Bryan Head, I want that done in the quickest way possible. We owe these people. We owe these people. And I just want you to know, along with the commission and everyone who's looked at this for years, to know that I'm incredibly grateful for all the work you've done. And I trust you explicitly to make a good decision. And I would just caution all of us here, or remind all of us here, that we have elected him. And he's the one that knows what's going on. And thank God we have the safety we have because of them. Anyway, I had to get up for my husband. Thank you.
Can I just say one thing real quick?
Sure.
First, thank you very much, man. I want everybody to understand something. If I felt like putting the jail in a specific location was putting the community at risk, I would never do it. I would not do it. You know, that's my entire adult life, whether serving in the Marine Corps or serving in community law enforcement, has been to protect the citizens of our nation and of our community. It's been my entire life. I would never do anything to jeopardize the safety and security of our community. When we were looking at the Smead site, and if that's where it ends, I owned a house in Equestrian Point for 10 years, back when it was really a brand new subdivision. I've got many, many very close friends in Equestrian Point, in Monte Vista, in Buena Vista. I never would have been on board with Smead being a site if I believed that that was putting those people and their children at risk. I'd never considered putting it out north of Enoch if I thought that it was putting the people in Enoch at risk. In fact, where Oscar's facility is, and where one of the jail sites that we looked at is just a few blocks from where I currently live. I don't have any hesitation about having the jail right next door to me because I understand the safety and the security of the jail and especially the new facilities that are being designed and built. That's one thing that I just want everybody to understand, is that we would never consider doing this if we felt that it was unsafe for the community. But the fact of the matter is it's something that we have to do. We have to have it. And we have to look at all the different considerations and balance them out about where it's going to be the best, as Commissioner Wood said earlier, for all of Iron County, for all of the citizens in Iron County. And for me personally, I believe that's the site on Automall for so many different reasons. And I don't believe that it's putting our community at risk. And I think that it actually is going to help stimulate the economy in that area. Because at least there's going to be something that's finally built there.
Please state your name.
I'm Jeannie Bartholomew, and I've been in on this for a long time. I started working for the county in 2008, and the gentleman up here and the ladies are correct. This has been going on forever. And I didn't used to take the minutes for the county commissioners, but I do now, and I can tell you that these gentlemen and Mrs. Wood here, they work very hard, very, very hard for our county. And I hear lots and lots of people complain about them, and I'm like, you know what? Go fill their shoes. For one day, fill their shoes. You would not want their job. And the last meeting we had, the first one we had at the commission meeting? The first one I was there, I wanted to get up so bad, but I didn't have my ducks in a row. And I was really mad because there were people there complaining about the site out at Smead. And they were comparing their mansion homes to, I live in Sunbow, which is almost directly across from the jail. And I'm behind Canyon View Middle School, Canyon View High School. My children all went to Fiddlers, and there's the jail right there. And so I was there, and I love my home. It may not be $1 million home, but we're still good people. There's still good people there. Doesn't matter what size your house you've got, you're not gonna please everybody at all the time. No matter where you place this jail, then it's not a prison. That's what everybody was complaining before. They wanted to compare it to a prison. This is not a prison. It's a jail. And we need it badly. And our sheriff cares about our county. All our elected officials care about our county. They care about our people. And like I said, as close as I live, I hear the ambulance sirens more. I don't know that I've lived there for a while. My son is now 29, I want to say, so I've lived there at least 29 years. First of all, I had no even clue that the jail was there. No clue. My kids go to Fiddlers Elementary. There's kids that walk up and down that street to come home. All the high school students, they walk up and down those streets. The kids go to the art circle for lunch. I have never once, since I've lived there, heard of any breakout, heard anybody escaping. If they did, we didn't know because they took care of it very well and very quietly. But I haven't had any problems with it. And I think no matter where the site is, whether any of those positions where they put it, we have to trust our law enforcement that things will run well. We have to trust our county commissioners. We have to do our elected officials, everybody, to make sure that we know that they're there for us. They don't want to put it in any bad spot. They don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. They don't want anybody's children to be hurt. Not once have I heard any children from any of those schools. None of them have been in danger. Never has there been a lockdown at any of those schools because of the jail facility. None. There's been others for, unfortunately, the things that are going on our trends now for threats to the school, but never, not one time, from the jail facility. So it is very quiet. like I said, there's times even now I forget that it's even there, unless somebody brings it up, and it's there. So we just all as a community, we need to trust these gentlemen and these ladies up here to know what they're talking about and know what they need, and that's all I have to say.
My name's Steve Miller. I am one of those that she was probably upset with over in Parowan at the meeting because I did voice my opinion. I was very concerned about the speed, location, obviously, because I live so close to Monte Vista. I will tell you this, the last meeting, I agree with everyone else, was excellent. You guys did a great job, explained a lot. I also had an opportunity to take a tour of the jail, and yeah, we all know we need a jail, there's no doubt about it. But going to meeting after meeting after meeting educates us that much more. And I think that helps us all understand what needs to be done. And we did, like these officials, we trust in them, and she said it right. We have to count on them to make the best decision for the citizens of Iron County. And you basically vote them in to do that for us. So we're gonna trust in you, and we know you'll do what's right, no matter where it goes. It is what it is, the community's growing. We need to support and help the people of the county. And thank you to everybody.
I want to make a comment. You know, sometimes we talk about correctional facilities like the people that have served their time are diseased when they're released, or they're just all bad people, and they're not. I want to share an experience. I ran a cabinet shop for 33 years. I sold it 3 years ago to my son. And it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, I had a gentleman come into the shop, and he said, I need a job. And I interviewed him and talked to him, and he explained to me, finally he came out and he said, I'm an ex-con. I just got released from prison in California. I did a really stupid thing. I served 3 years, and he said, nobody will give me a chance. And I gave him a chance. I hired him, and he's one of the best employees we have. In fact, without disclosing too much, and I didn't start him at a real high wage, but I did start him at a decent wage because he had some experience. But I gave him a huge raise from the beginning of when I hired him to the end of the year. He received a huge wage increase because he's today one of the best employees we've ever hired. And I just want to make that point. These are correctional facilities. They're facilities where people pay their time, they pay their debt to society, they're released. And I think it's, yeah, there's some bad people get released, but I think generally we need to accept these people back in our communities. And like was brought out, these are county prisoners that are released back in the county. The state and federal release, they're taken back to the other locations. But I wanted to make that point that we need to give people a second chance in life, and sometimes we're the ones that benefit from that.
Maybe Shalon, could you tell us what our programming is right now in the jail? How much space we have for programming versus the new design for programming and things like that?
All right, so currently we have 2 programming rooms. They're booked seriously from 8 a.m. till 9:30 when we lock down. People, because our community is awesome, everybody wants to come in and help and give us their services, whether it's religious services, or we have a resume building class, Inside Out Dad, where they learn to be better fathers. So we do have a lot of programming that just piles through these 2 classrooms. The rest of our classrooms have been turned into, we call them dorms. Other people like to call them bunk houses, where they're just like an old classroom. We've thrown 12 bunks in there. I mean, just haven't thrown them. I mean, we tried to design them the best as we can, but they have 12 bunks. There's our female housing. Again, the Iron County Jail was built for 4 females, four females in Iron County. We sometimes have up to 40 females now, but we have them in a housing area that is, there's 2 bathrooms or 2 toilets, 1 shower, no outside light. And that's, it's terrible, right? But really, if we were built more efficiently, like these new designs are, then we could house females in a better area. And we could actually use our programming areas for programming, which is huge, and it reduces recidivism. And we can help these inmates that end up being citizens in our community get back on their feet.
My name's Ken Riceville. I live here in Cedar City. First, I'd like to say thank you, Sheriff, for what you do. I live probably 3 blocks from the jail right now. Didn't know it was there when I bought the house. Didn't care. Still there. I like the ambulances being there because I know if I have a problem, they're going to be there in 5 minutes. My concern is this, and I didn't know it until tonight when you said that they were looking at another site on BLM land off of the retail that's already set up there.
Not BLM, at the borders.
It's private, but it borders.
My concern is the best use of land. You know, the best tax revenue coming in from that. And you stated that land's been there for 5 years and nothing's been built on it.
20 years.
20 years, I don't care what the number is. You haven't seen the growth that you've seen in the last 5 years. You haven't seen the growth that you're gonna see in the next 10 to 20 years. You've got South Interstate down here, South intersection down here completely clogged, and it's only gonna get worse. So why would more retail wanna go down there? You're gonna want it on the north end of town. And that's where it should be. So that you got better traffic, better flow, everything. It's better for the whole community. It gives a tax base to the community. You represent up outside of Cedar City, so do you. So I understand that, but Cedar City is the largest number of people within your county. So that's also who you're representing. That's all I gotta say. You know, whether you put it on auto mall or what, think about the tax base. That's what you gotta look at too.
Can I respond to that? And I don't take it, maybe stay there because you may have another question. I don't take issue with what you've said at all. I think it's a really valid point. We would all like that north end to grow. There's a lot, including the sheriff, that believe that this will actually help spur that growth. The other site that Commissioner Cousins talked about is actually currently zoned residential, not commercial. So there wouldn't be a trade-off there. There would be a trade-off with residential if there was a trade-off at all. The speed site would potentially have the same impact. If we build there, then it's gonna be, anywhere we build, there's not gonna be tax paid on it because government doesn't pay tax on itself. So any place we build, that is the case. My only point I was gonna make is if we end up raising the old site, by raising, I mean tearing down the old site and converting it to commercial space, then you get that trade-off. You've made Main Street commercial space more accessible, which would offset that tax base loss. But I think it's a factor. I think if that place was booming, first of all, we couldn't afford the site. The reason we can even consider affording it is because property values are low, because it's just nothing is happening. There's a lot of belief, and you see it every time you go in, that it spurs growth. So and that's something that, who knows, we would see if it happens or not.
And I fully agree with what you just said. If you razz the old jail and everything and put commercial, retail, whatever in there, that's great. That's not a 40-acre site.
And it's not. It's not a direct trade-off. And who knows what we'll do with it. That's one of the options. I think we're at, 15 acres at that, or 5 acres at the old site. 5 acres.
So I don't know whether you all remember the Washington County facility that went in down in Purgatory. It was there all by itself. Nobody wanted it, so they put it out, clear outside of town, right in the middle of nowhere. Now look how you can't even see the jail anymore because it's totally built up. Wheeler Machinery and a lot of different county buildings and the horse park, and it's just built up. And everybody that talks to us about this site says you start something out there and the rest will come. That's why we thought we would build toward the back, and that those retail stores will cover us up.
That sounds a lot better. Because when you just talked about automobile site,
Yeah, and that's not really what,
It was a
We
bad
haven't
thing.
defined what auto mall site is.
yeah,
It's an error.
it's an area.
It's a big area, and it's all
Yeah.
retail area.
Yeah, what we're looking,
This is up against the mountain.
specifically what we're looking at there, and there's several parcels there that have come into play. But what's, I think specifically what the sheriff's talking about is it's set back, almost back against the hill, which leaves all of that stuff that's potentially retail and such now intact.
Maybe that's what you ought to explain to people, other than just saying it's an auto mall site.
Thank you. That's, yeah, we've talked about this so much that we, you know, in our minds, we kind of know, but it's.
Because when I looked at it, I'm like, oh, is that right there on top of that hill?
No,
Okay.
that's not.
Yeah, no,
right.
thank you
Yeah.
for bringing that
Thank
up.
you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I mean, this.
You know, I wanted to answer a question that somebody asked that didn't get answered in the last meeting. And somebody was asking about water. In fact, they sent another email to the group asking about the water impact. And this is public information, so I'm not sharing Cedar City secrets, but there's an 18-inch main line that comes basically east and west, that goes right down the road. It isn't Auto Mall Drive. Auto Mall Drive has its own water lines that are meant to feed Auto Mall, but there's a main line that goes down that dirt gravel road. It's an 18-inch main line, which we would tie into if we built at that site. So there's certainly the capacity there. And basically, as far as water needs, you know, imagine a hotel of about the same size, add a little bit of use because they're there all day. At a hotel, people leave during the day and come back at night. But it's basically can be about the same water use as a hotel, and sewer input as a hotel, plus some, like a hotel on steroids, if you will. It's not like a city.
Anybody else? Bob?
Bob Tuckett. I may not be the oldest person in this room, but I knew all the previous 4 sheriffs personally. I hiked the Narrows with Otto on there, so I knew them all. I think this is a difficult decision because it involves a lot of emotions. And I know from previous history, emotions make us make some, I guess, some incorrect decisions sometimes. I think the key points of whatever is done, whether it's this jail or an auto mall or Costco or whatever else, that the number one thing is it needs to be centrally located. We have people in Bryan Head, we have people in Canaryville, we have people out in Burl, we have them up in Parowan, Paraguna. You know, we can't put it to serve every single person the way they think they should. It needs to be centrally located. The other point is that it needs to be as cost efficient as possible. The old jail, we want to refer to the old jail, because if you look at those pictures, I remember those old jails that are on those pictures. So the jail we currently have doesn't facilitate 2022, and it doesn't facilitate 2024 for sure. And so whatever done, whether it's a 1-pod, 2-pod, whatever, needs to be built for the future. And of course, to build for the future, we need to consider what this is going to cost for us taxpayers. Okay. Another key point, which I think is important, is we've talked about transportation. The auto mall one against the hill is better accommodated to the types of things that the prisoners may need, specifically the hospital in there. You know that's going to happen on there, and we wouldn't have to transport them all the way from clear out the other end of Unique or clear out to the iron mines to get them to the hospital. So I think that's another thing that makes it so it needs to be centrally located, close to facilities at the correctional facility where our county jail needs for the inmates. Safe environment for everybody. I remember, I don't know if any of you ever went to the meetings when they built this jail, but there was a lady from Minersville that said, I'm gonna have to drive past that prison every day. That's gonna be scary. My question to her was, do you ever go to Salt Lake? Yeah, you drive right past the prison going to Salt Lake. And so, as previously pointed out here, I don't think that matters a hill of beans. Where you gotta drive by it, somebody's gonna have to drive by it that doesn't work at the facility, has no ties to it. You can't build it anywhere, it won't have that type of traffic. But I think that auto mall back against the hill is an excellent choice. Thank you.
Allison Woolley. So it's funny that you mentioned up north because we actually just moved from right by there. We were in Sandy, almost Draper, so my sister's by the point of the mountain too. And he's right, yeah. But they put it by the freeway, and they're even the new prison that they're building is still going to be accessible to all the police departments that use it. So I want to put my bill in for auto mall as well. And I also wanted to clarify, the land that you're talking that's more against the mountain, I know there's school trust land right there. Is that where you're talking?
It's on one side, it's to the
Just to the
south.
North.
Oh, that's what I meant.
Oh, you're talking
The
Sitla,
south-
to the
the
north of
Sitla
Sitla.
is to the south of this property.
Yeah. Sitla's to the south, we're to the north of Sitla.
Right.
Okay.
And BLM to the east.
Well, and I
So it kind of
understand
has
that
a
there's,
buffer around it.
and I understand there's more other plans for that property, and that you guys did try to acquire that, because I did some research, and I like that those properties, like with the state land and the school trust land, it ends up being like 80 acres. So there's definitely room for growth if they want to bring the courthouse and different stuff. I like the idea that he was talking about with Davis, I think, where they did the tunnel. That I love, and that reminded me of like Salt Lake. We do that when I am LDS, but that is how we keep our religious leaders safe, is they have built a tunnel, which it will keep the police officers safe, anyone who may want to develop around there. And I think also, if I was an inmate, that would be nice to stay indoors. If it's snowing, you don't have to go outside. So that's a plus too. But yeah, I think tonight we have had a lot of good education, so I appreciate that. And I just hope you take all the factors into account, and that's all I would hope and pray. So, thank you.
Wrap it up. Oh.
I wasn't saying to wrap it up, I was just saying, I was telling Commissioner Wood that, to ask you to take food home. I think we ended up with a lot of extra food, so. Not that we're done, I just.
I got a tickle in my throat. Is there anybody else that would like to come speak? We also have, the commission meeting, March 14th, at 10 o'clock. It's our regular meeting that we'll be talking about this again, and you be able to speak then
Yes,
also.
There'll be a public hearing at that time as
At
well.
that time.
At this
And-
location?
No, it will be in the courthouse in Parowan.
Courthouse in Parowan.
68 South, 100 East. Parowan.
That's where we have
Parowan, Utah, county seat.
That's the county seat.
He's from Parowan, he's being facetious.
You mean the mother town?
Mother town.
Well, technically, my family was, yes. It was another gentleman that asked the question.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay. Did you want to ask a question? Did she say?
No, that asked for the meeting would be, I think, yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess we can close our public hearing now.
Oh, Justin was saying that meeting will also be streamed.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
also be streamed.
And this, I'm sorry, was this meeting recorded?
Yeah, it's being recorded, there'll be minutes, it's being live streamed as we speak.
It'll be on YouTube?
Yeah, the Iron County Commission Live.
Can you post a link to this right by the other one?
It will, yes.
Yeah.
So that's the page for Iron County Commission is the link, and that goes on all of our commission agendas. It's on the agenda. And you can access all the
YouTube,
meetings.
I don't think we said YouTube. Paul did, but I don't think it was on the microphone.
Oh,
YouTube.
yes, it is a YouTube link, but tonight, everybody's talked about being on the Iron County website, but it's a link to YouTube.
So Chair will close the public hearing, and thank you all for coming. It was a great meeting, I think, good informational, and maybe we'll see you on the 14th, and thanks for all coming.
Thank you, everybody.